Hello and welcome to the Ask Assaad Show. I'm Michael Gaines, host of the podcast NOV Today, and glad you are with us today as we talk about business and strategy and its impact on the energy industry. We're going to be bringing insight out as we talk to NOV's resident expert, Assaad Mohanna, about all things in the energy industry and focus in on topics that you, our viewers, let us know that you're interested in talking about. So we look forward to today's conversation with Assaad. Before we get to him, we are going to head over to Shelby Dumaine, and she is going to tell us a little bit about not only today's show, but also how you can get some of your questions in on the show. Hey, Shelby.
Hey, Michael. So one of the great things about this show is that it kind of gives us and the audience an opportunity to ask Assaad different questions on the market. However, I just wanted to remind everybody that any questions you put in the comments today will be compiled and used for next week's show. So we still definitely want to hear your questions and your comments, but we always like to make sure that we have the most research and most up-to-date information we can. So we put all of those questions into a mailbag and we ask them the following week. This week we will be we'll be answering questions from last week's mailbag. We got all of those questions from a couple different sources. They came from LinkedIn comments, YouTube, Facebook, and then they also came from our email. So if you have a question you'd like to submit for next week's show, you can email it to askassaad@nov.com. We read those every single day, so we'd love to hear your questions. And then one of our newest ways for you to contact us is actually through a comment helpline number. And so we have that up there now. It's country code +1 and then 346-223-4799. I really love this option. You can keep it anonymous if you'd like to, or you can leave your name and your title and where you work, and we'd love to feature you on the show. But if you'd rather stay anonymous, then that's one option you can do there.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Shelby. Yeah, no, that's great. Especially the comment line. And then we get some calls in that, or even had one this morning. So definitely drop us a line if you want to share your thoughts or comments on the show. We'd love to have that. All right. So as we mentioned, actually in the promo of today's show, in the summary, we're actually going to be talking about kind of the financial side of things, especially in the energy industry, as certainly things have taken a challenging turn in some corners of our industry. And so we're going to talk in more detail and actually get a little insight and possibly even dispel some myths or misunderstandings in the space. So we're going to bring in NOV's Assaad Mohanna. He's the Director of Business Strategy here at NOV. So good to see you this week, Assaad.
Great to see you too, Michael.
All right. So as usual, we like to start at the top of the show by kind of talking about major happenings or news that's gone on in the industry. And I think a lot of folks are pretty keen on one particular item that transpired earlier this week.
That's right. First of all, it's always great to be with you, Michael. We got used to starting the show with kind of a rundown of what happened the previous week. This time, it's really one piece of news that's taken the spotlight, and that's Chesapeake filing for Chapter 11 on Sunday. Chesapeake being the pioneer in U.S. shale fracking, which really makes it the biggest oil and gas company to file for bankruptcy so far since the coronavirus pandemic. If people remember, Chesapeake was once the nation's #2 natural gas producer. And that's really thanks to it adopting fracking ahead of everybody, really. Aubrey McClendon, their late founder and CEO, was considered one of the leaders of the shale boom that transformed the United States into one of the largest or the largest oil and gas producer in the world.
So, I know that, to your point, and I certainly was aware of that news. I think one of the things that might be maybe less known or apparent is really, honestly, what is Chapter 11 filing? I know that it might have different names, of course, based on your geography or country. But for the U.S., Chapter 11 filing is really something that some folks might understand a little more or less than others. So maybe we could take a quick step back just to kind of help maybe set the groundwork to understand, what this means, and maybe we can from there kind of broaden it up. So Assaad, let's maybe kind of take a quick pause and say, okay, for those that aren't familiar or maybe aren't aware, maybe they're in a different region. So Chapter 11 filing in the U.S., what is that?
Yeah, great point. Unfortunately, we've been hearing about Chapter 11 bankruptcy for the last 4 or 5 years, and we're gonna see a bit more of that. But yes, Chapter 11 is also called reorganization bankruptcy, which means the company works with its lenders or decides to work with its lenders on restructuring its debt when it's unable to fulfill or service that debt anymore. That ends up changing the structure of the company, the capital structure of the company, and shifts things around between debt and equity. Whenever we talk about enterprise or any company, there's an enterprise value, and that value is the combination of equity and debt. And any debt, such as revolving credit facilities, which are common, usually have more of a senior claim to companies' assets than equity holders, right? So if you've offered or if you're a lender for a company and the company is not able to fulfill its debt payments because it doesn't have any more cash flow, then as the lender, you have first claim on its PP&E or property, plant, and equipment. After, of course, you go for the outstanding cash. I have a little slide, kind of debt 101 or enterprise value 101, and it's really that pyramid to get put together is the enterprise value, and that's the combination of the common stock, the preferred stock, and then the debt. The debt has more chance to recover because it has that senior claim on the company's assets, and it's usually less risky. Those holding the equity end up being lost in the chain when a company goes bankrupt. Lenders can also place things called covenants. They're agreements between the lender and the borrower that say put restrictions on the borrowing company to maintain a designated credit profile, which is usually achieved by a certain leverage ratio or debt to equity ratio. So I won't get much into that, but what it is, a Chapter 11 filing is the opportunity for a company to start over. It a lot of times means that it will carry on with its operation, sometimes at a reduced capacity, but with significant change in capital structure. That's
right. Because I know that one of the things that I've heard some tell me is, oh yeah, when you file for Chapter 11, that means you're padlocking the doors and that's it. And while that could be the case, I think many times, especially we're talking about Chesapeake in this case, in this regard, they've said in many documents, we're continuing business as usual. That there are some considerations, if you have a outstanding invoice or we're talking about royalties, things like that. But on the whole, in this case, the idea is we're continuing on, but trying to restructure some of that debt. So so maybe to that point, Assaad, maybe now that we at least have talked a little bit about, okay, what is it, kind of how does it impact them? I'd like to talk a little more on kind of the how. So how did, or what, even for that matter, but what or how did Chesapeake kind of get into the position that honestly, and I think I even saw in some of the comments, it's not just them, though we're focusing on that today. It's many others that are probably in a similar capacity, but in this case, what kind of was the tipping point or trigger for Chesapeake to have to get in this position?
Yeah, well, if we go back a little bit with COVID-19, stagnating the world economy, price of oil dropping in the negative for WTI in April, really put everybody in a tough position. These oil producers had little cash flow to service their debt, let alone spend money on their OPEX. We started seeing well shut-ins, rig count dropping. Right after that, capex slashing for the whole year, and some companies going through Chapter 11 as early as April. For Chesapeake in specific, rumors were that Chesapeake would be struggling in that phase, and indeed they came out and announced that they might not, earlier in the last month, that they might not be able to service their current debt, and did end up skipping a $13.5 million debt payment last month, which really triggered a severe stock price decline. If we go back to January alone, that stock price was close to $200 now in single digit.
So, I mean, but that's when we're talking about this, I mean, I recall a conversation that we had in an earlier episode of the Ask Assaad show where I think we were kind of talking about things to look forward to, or not really look forward to, but to look ahead towards in 2020. And I feel like one of the items that we had talked about, there were several, 4 or 5 different things, but one of them was looking ahead to seeing some potential increase in bankruptcies or Chapter 11 filings.
That's right. Even if we're seeing a dollar or a barrel price at $40 today, there's still struggle out there because of low demand. People aren't yet getting into their cars and driving to work as they were expected to, or getting in airplanes to get to places. Mm-hmm. What Chesapeake is looking for, Michael, from Chapter 11 is going for a stronger balance sheet. And every company for that matter. Yes, you're right. Whiting Petroleum sought Chapter 11 in April, which was the first of the big boys. Diamond Offshore, a prominent offshore driller who drills for BP and Hess, also filed for bankruptcy in late April. So it's touching everybody because of reduced cash flows. And Chapter 11, yeah, they get to carry on with their business. But it's expensive. Chapter 11 are expensive. The cost to file, to go through the paperwork, is 5 to 7% of the value of the company. Oh wow! That just goes to banks and consulting, and advisors and all that. So restructuring is expensive. But it's not only that. It's also the price that the company pays before the bankruptcy, when things kind of add on and pile up, and after, when the credibility and reputation is also affected. So then, we kind of talked about, what the what, which I think we covered. So maybe drilling down, and again, this is more of kind of a examination into a particular example just for our conversation. But in this case, how did they get to the point of where they're going through this exercise? Yeah. I'd be happy to give a bit of background about Chesapeake. The company was founded in '89 with a very small amount, $50,000 investment. And for ever since, it's become one of the well-known major natural gas producers. At one point, it was the 6th largest producer by volume overall, oil and gas. Their original master plan, Michael, was the big leveraged bet on gas. But we know the story with gas. 12 years ago, the spot price at Henry Hub was in the teens, I think $13, $14. Today, we're looking at Henry Hub at $1.50. So bad news for gas producers. So that cheap gas convinced Chesapeake to make a big bet on oil, which is when they went ahead, if y'all remember, about 2 years ago, and bought Wild Horse Resources. And that was a $4 billion acquisition in October 2018 that really proved to be really poorly timed.
So, one of the questions that I've had, and I know that there have been some folks kind of alluding to it in the comments here, is okay, and I kind of understand, but if we can we take a step back and say, okay, we've been talking and kind of narrowing on Chesapeake, but really kind of the concept in general, and maybe in a broader context. So, what does this impact look like on the industry overall? Is this just the tip of the iceberg, or is this somewhat of an outlier, and we can expect something else? What do we see there?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. We've seen analysts warn that dozens more are expected. Year to date, we've seen 18 operators file for bankruptcy, and that's just in six months. We saw that number during the whole year last year. So we're already at double the pace of bankruptcies from 2019. If we go back to what we saw in 2014, really the tsunami of bankruptcy started in 2016, a couple of years after the crisis started. So there is a significant lag there as companies try to work on their cash flows, find new ways to divest and create new sources of revenue. There was a report by Deloitte recently that said that a third of the U.S. shale operators are practically insolvent below $35 a barrel, and that's partly true because we've seen that struggle. Even at $40 today, not everybody's in the positive. They even warned that by end of year, we'll see north of $300 billion of assets being written down. If for those who have followed the news lately, BP's announced a $17.5 billion write down, or plan on announcing a $17.5 billion write off in their Q2 earning, which we're very approaching here in the coming few weeks. And Shell a couple of days ago announced $22 billion in write downs of their assets because they're seeing that their asset value has reduced so significantly. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is so to kind of to your point. We're definitely in the midst or in the middle of really seeing kind of what the year obviously has unfolded and where we're going. And definitely want you to finish your thought, but I'm also I have the Assaad Mohanna voice in my head, and I hear echoes of silver lining. I know that there's something we can be looking forward to in a positive sense, but certainly know that we've got to kind of get through what we're going through right now.
That's true, and there certainly is a couple of silver linings here. There is a good chance that Chesapeake will survive bankruptcy and carry on with its couple of thousand employees to keep doing what they're doing. That's a chance that's available. But there's also a possibility for a ripple effect. A big company like Chesapeake has big contracts with pipeline operators like Kinder Morgan and Williams companies and Energy Transfer, and these guys are big companies, established midstream companies that rely on Chesapeake's product and business. So if the bankruptcy court decides anything that's not in these guys' favor, then they're in a crunch as well. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not likely because prices and contracts have already been negotiated down. So they have a good case to keep the contract pricing and terms as is. But there's a ripple effect anytime there's a bankruptcy announced there. And I'll get to my silver lining, and I think there's a true one where this is an opportunity for us or for our industry to change the behavior that we've had in the last decade or so. It's been, Michael, let's go borrow some money, buy some assets, some leases, and drill hundreds and hundreds of wells and produce as much as we can. That no longer is sustainable just because that treadmill effect carries on and puts a lot of weight for those companies to maintain that production, which means at depletion rates of 60 and 70% for those wells that we're drilling, it's just it's the rock that's dictating the business. So while we will see some more bankruptcies here and there, I think some restructuring is healthy, and it's beneficial for the industry as we progress and build a stronger oil and gas industry, with shale still being a significant contributor to the business.
So it's some good insight. Certainly, wish them and their team all the best as they continue to go through it. I know it's a heavy lift, but we'll be looking ahead to see how things unfold. So appreciate that insight, Assaad. So we're gonna go ahead and transition over to Shelby Dumaine to kind of bring in some of the mailbag questions which we got from you, the viewer, over the last week. Hey, Shelby.
Hey, Michael. So this first question comes from Rami Abdallah. He is a subsea engineer on LinkedIn, and he asked, "Is shale extraction environmentally sustainable, and how does it compare to deep water extraction, as that can be made environmentally sustainable and safe as achieved in Norway and Canada?"
Yeah, I think it's a good one, and it's a big topic for our industry. Shale is just the sheer amount of equipment that's involved, or horsepower, the emissions associated with the fracking process are significant. The flaring process to get rid of the gas that's produced along with the oil also contributes to carbon emissions, and that's a really bad mark for what we do. Add to that the contamination of aquifers where that's applicable, the earthquakes. We have some issues that need to be addressed. In deep water, yes, it has been done more safely. However, environmentally, I think we had the biggest disaster in the history of offshore drilling 10 years ago with Macondo. So I wouldn't say it's safer or more environmentally friendly. I would say in both we have some work to do, and a great opportunity for the new generation to come in and say, okay, how do we make this a lot more safer? How do we make this a lot, how do we make the process of extracting and developing oil fields greener and less impactful to the environment?
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So this next question comes from Garima Gayatri, also on LinkedIn, and she is the host of On the Dais, which is a really great show. And she was wondering, how do companies prepare themselves? So a global health pandemic, employee safety on one hand, and then production and low price environments on the other. How do companies prepare?
Yeah, I'm sure every company is going back and asking questions internally, and how is it that they can make it through this one and the ones to come. I think there's a couple of factors that you can't live without when it comes to remaining in business, gaining customer trust, and those two are service and innovation. Those two, I think, are important pillars to get any company to maintain a differentiating business model. And Garima touched on business models, and that's a great one, because we're used to in most cases, to the day rate model, or whatever we've been doing for the last 3 or 4 or 5 decades. So not much has changed. We've tried a few things over the years, but it hasn't always worked. I think we're getting to the point, with the help of cleaner data generation, really staying connected to every corner of the well life cycle, that we're able to shift those business models a bit more confidently than we were in the past. And really just kind of tying in the business model to how to survive. It's differentiation. I mean, the two most common are do you differentiate, or are you a cost leader? Yes, you have to differentiate through technology, through capability. And the focus today is, how do we keep our people safe at all time?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I agree wholeheartedly with that, Assaad. Ultimately, ensuring that we're keeping our employees, community, and then those around us safe, as well as continuing to innovate are key drivers. I know certainly here at NOV, and I know other organizations share that. So appreciate the insight as always with us here. So Assaad Mohanna, Director of Business Strategy here at NOV. And so I know that we had some of those questions from a mailbag. And Shelby, I know that there are those that are watching today or that have joined us maybe for the first time. So Shelby, for those that are interested in being able to submit some questions for Assaad for our next episode, what's the best way for them to do that?
Absolutely, Michael. So I'd say maybe the quickest way is if you just wanted to shoot a quick message, you could comment it below on the live, whether you're watching on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. I go through all of those. If you wanted to really go into depth and ask us a more detailed question and you didn't maybe want it in the comments, you can email that. We have it at askassad@nov.com. So you can email us there. And like I said, we check that inbox every single day. And sometimes multiple times a day. I love looking at just seeing, are we getting any questions? And then we also have our call line. So if you want to stay anonymous, or maybe you want to mention your name and title so we can mention, highlight you on the show, that number is country code +1, and then 346-223-4799. So we also love hearing from everybody. You can leave us a voicemail there, and we would love to hear your voice and hear your questions.
All right. Well, thanks, Shelby. Appreciate that. And again, thanks to Assaad Mohanna and to our viewers who submitted questions for today's show. We appreciate you joining us. And as always, look forward to joining you here on the Ask Assaad show every Wednesday afternoon here, and look forward to our next conversation. So from all of us here at NOV, thanks for watching and for listening, and we'll talk to you later.